Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Not a problem, Kevin, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, dude, this is a long time coming. I've always enjoyed talking with you. I think we always have really cool, deep philosophical discussions. So I look forward to another one of those.
We'll see how good I do today.
Well, so one thing that I actually wanted to ask you about was kind of like your transformation that you've gone through recently, because I remember some like a conversation we had, and I don't want to go into the details of it if you don't want me to air it on the podcast, but you talked to me, this was probably several months ago, about a realization you had about your perceived level of niceness, or that like you felt, I'm not as nice as I thought I was. And I feel like that sounds like a really deep, profound revelation that I'd like to know a little more context on, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did not know that that's where you were going with this.
I'm sorry, I got to get into it, man.
No,
it sounded like it was a big life moment for you, so I think
that
could be powerful for people.
Yeah. I don't remember when that was that I had that realization, but it is a realization that I have. And in fact, it keeps coming back because I have historically been the type of person who's a nice guy. And what I mean by that is I put on a persona or an outward facing self that says, hey, I'm a nice guy, I'll take care of you and all this stuff. But in actuality, what was going on behind the scenes, behind the mask, is resentment and judgment, or straight up, I'm lying to somebody to their face because in actuality, I don't want to help them out. I don't have the time to put myself out there and all that. Or I don't speak up for myself, right? And so the realization was that me being a quote-unquote nice guy was actually the most asshole-ish thing that I could do, because I wasn't being honest. I wasn't being honest with myself, and I wasn't being honest with those people that I was a nice guy to. Now, on the surface, one could say, or I could say, well, actually, I was a nice guy. I wasn't an asshole. But if I just stop and look at it objectively, what am I actually doing when I'm being nice to somebody when I don't actually want to be, or when I don't speak up for myself? Is this person then comes to know me as this particular persona, and if I don't live up to that persona, I've what do you call it? I've messed myself up.
Mm-hmm.
I've basically built myself up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Expectations are will not be met. And I don't remember telling you that, but do you remember when that was?
Yeah, it was in a text exchange where we were catching up, and
I remember now.
Yeah, and we were talking about. I think we were talking about like just. I think I was trying to talk to you about getting started on a podcast, and talk to you about selling the microphone and everything.
November, I suppose.
Yes,
yeah.
It was sometime last year. It wasn't too many months ago, but it was several months ago.
Yeah,
and at the time, I was about to leave my job, but I hadn't fully gotten there. And you even actually talked to me about the 9-to-5 thing, which I would love for you to expand on that too. But yeah, I thought that was interesting because to me, that seemed like a very big realization of the mask that you perceived to be wearing, and the perception that you wanted to put out into the world, and thus creating not only expectations for other people, but expectations for yourself that you knew that you weren't even being true to, and were inevitably going to lead to disappointment on both ends of the spectrum.
It causes more stress than is needed. It also puts me in a position to where I'm avoiding conflict, which isn't healthy.
It's not. You let it build up.
You let it build up. It's the law of little things. It's just one more little nugget, another little nugget, another nugget, and the whole time people are literally pushing further and further past my boundaries that I have for myself. But because I'm afraid of hurting their feelings, or because I'm afraid of looking bad in their eyes, I'm discounting my personal wants and needs and desires. And so that realization that I'm not as nice as I think was a liberating realization that, holy crap, why am I treating myself? I'm treating myself like an asshole. Meanwhile, I'm bowing over and letting somebody fuck me in the ass, even though they're not technically fucking me over. They're just going after what they want, right? Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. What I get from that, and what I've gotten from that realization, was that, one, being an asshole is fine, and it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and go and murder somebody, right?
There's a difference between asshole and murderer, yes.
Right. But that's the thing. It's like I had this conflation that an asshole is an evil person. An asshole is someone I don't want to be around. When in actuality, what I thought an asshole was someone who just knows themselves and knows what their boundaries are and knows what they want and what they don't want.
And draws a line.
Well,
I mean, I think there's a difference between that kind of asshole. I don't even know if asshole is the right word. But then there are people who literally are just like, they might not even know themselves, but they also still take what they want, or at least what they perceive to want. And that might not be their true wants or desires, but it is their superficial ones. And then they're stomped by any means necessary. I don't think there's
psychopaths and sociopaths.
But that's not the kind of asshole you're talking about here. That's what I want to clarify, is that, like, you're not talking about, like, yeah, go ahead, be an asshole and, like, don't respect people. That's not what you're saying.
That's not at all what I'm saying.
That's not at all what you're saying. I just want to clarify it, because it's going to come across, I'm not sure.
That's not at all what I'm saying. That should be the title of my book. I'm an asshole, but I'm really not. No, I'm still a nice guy. I still love people. I still see people for humanity, for the humanity that's within them. It's about me. It's about how I've treated myself in the years. It's how I've been the asshole in my own life, if that makes any sense. That's what I mean by I've been an asshole, because I would never let anybody do to me what I've done to myself, right? The way I talk to myself, the way I say yes to things that I don't actually want to do, which I think is why the conversation came up, because you were interested in selling me your equipment, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll think about it and all this stuff, because I didn't want to hurt you're my friend, and I don't want to hurt your feelings. And so instead of me being honest
and just saying
what I felt, and maybe having a discussion that could have put me in a place to where I could have purchased, I didn't give you the benefit of the doubt that you can handle it. Yeah. That's one asshole move. Two, I negate my own intuition. It's the second asshole move. And then three, I put both of us in a position to where down the road, I'm circulating money with resentment. And that does nothing but cause problems in the world. I know it sounds minute, but at the end of the day...
No, it's the larger picture of the story you're telling. Yeah, because it's like, this is a specific scenario, but this is telling a larger picture of what you've been dealing with and the different ways that you've been not friendly to yourself. I've been learning very similar lessons myself, actually, in these last few months, especially since getting separation from my old job, because there's a lot of concessions that I would make with the old job, time-wise and energy and where I was putting it, that it just wasn't allowing me to spend the time the way that I wanted to. And then I would always feel selfish when I would take what little time I had and do it the way that I wanted to. And I felt like I was always giving up something, but then I wasn't saying anything, and so I was just holding resentment.
Exactly.
So I had the exact same problem, and I was going through the exact same things. I'm in a much better place now where, I do what I want, but I also have to respect, people in my life that I also share my time with. Significant others, you got to respect their time too. So I've made it very clear, with my girlfriend. I've made it clear with her, like, hey, listen, sometimes I need to do this. I need to do this podcast. I need to edit. Sometimes I don't want to be on my phone. It's nothing personal to you. I just need to do this thing. But then I make sure that I still make time for her, and that, hey, when we're together, I'm together with you, and I'm not paying attention to my phone. I'm in the room with you, and we just have to balance that equation. And in the same way, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to not always be worried about my time. You need to be worried about your time too. And don't worry, we'll find time in the middle that coincides and that crosses over, and then we'll fully be present with one another, which is better than me resenting, feeling like, fuck, I wanted to edit the podcast today, and now I'm hanging out with you, and then I would take it out on her, and I would be like mad about it. And it was like, it's not her fault. She just wanted to hang out with me, and she didn't understand the internal struggle that I was going through.
Exactly.
And I think that that's so important, because when you respect yourself and you put your foot down on the things that you really need to put your foot down on, sometimes it can be an uncomfortable conversation in that moment. But the long-term solution of that is getting to an understanding that is more sustainable and is less likely to keep holding on and to keep just chipping away at your soul until eventually there's nothing left to chip away at.
I'm thinking of marriages that end, and a lot of times you can just hear all the just resentment and all the nastiness come out. And if you ask the person who's doing all the complaining, it's like, were you being honest with yourself during this relationship? Were you asking for what you wanted, or were you compromising the whole time? And if they're being honest, that's what the answer is going to be. I can almost guarantee it, because people only go for what they know, right? And if you've been saying yes to something that you actually aren't a yes to, and you completely suppress it and just keep pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, it will eventually explode like Mentos in a Coke can, or in a Coke can.
Yeah.
And the reason why is we are not built to lie to ourselves. That's just I can't imagine that that's what the truth. The truth is we're supposed to be expansive. The truth is that we're supposed to be honest. The truth is we're supposed to be ourselves and express the light that's within ourselves. And anytime you put some sort of block, self-imposed block on yourself, it feels good in the short term. It's just like you're just saying, I mean, essentially repeating what you said, but in the long term, it's going to cause volatility. I mean, you can see that play out in, society. You can see that play out in family dynamics. You see that play out at work, in work relationships. And I think identifying that you're an asshole, for me, identifying that I was an asshole was huge. I mean, one of the ways I discovered that was I'm doing a self-development course right now through the Wright Foundation, and it's about emotional intelligence, emotional and social intelligence. And I'm loving it. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's weekly assignments that are really, really small assignments, but if you're really going in on it,
they get to the core.
It gets to the core of it, right? Truly discovering that something is hurting you, or something is angering you, or something's causing you to feel sad or fear or joy, and recognizing those things then opens up your limiting beliefs about yourself and about others or other things. And then I've come to also know that it brings up your yearnings. What are you actually yearning for? Your deeper yearnings. And one of the yearnings that I've come to understand about myself is that I actually have a huge yearning to be understood. and to matter. And I find that I don't meet those yearnings a lot of times because I have a lot of limiting beliefs. And one of my beliefs is that I don't belong, like people don't want me around, which is fascinating because it doesn't actually play out in reality.
No, it doesn't.
But in my mind, the only reason why people want me around is it's for some random moment of just like, oh, they just see me as like this guy that they can get good knowledge out of, but they don't actually want me around, right? So
that's a cynical view.
Exactly.
It's a very cynical
I'm an asshole.
Well, only to yourself, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to me because I can see where that, I mean, creates this pressure cooker that was bound to explode at some point. But it also is such a natural reaction based on the social programming that we've been taught just as a culture. And like you said, it's like our core is to be ourselves.
Yep.
And when we lived in the wild, you could. There weren't as many rules of society. There weren't as many things that you got to fit in this box and, oh, don't go too far here because then people will perceive you this way. I mean, you have no idea the amount of insecurity that I've felt about talking about psychedelics, knowing that people are just going to be like, druggy. Even though, like, that's clearly, if you listen to my podcast and you talk to me, you understand that I have a very nuanced view of very particular drugs and particular psychedelics, and not so much, I'm not into cocaine, I'm not into heroin, I'm not into those other things, which, there's an argument to be made about legalization of all of them for safety reasons, but for actual, like, usage, I don't condone the use of most drugs, and it's only very specific ones for people who are prepared. But my insecurity is like, oh, if I talk about these honestly, for all the ignorant people who, and I'm not saying ignorant in a negative way, and they just don't know, all the ignorant people to just be like, oh yeah, this guy's a druggie. He just talks about doing drugs, right?
Right.
And I hate that. Right. I'm like so insecure about that, and I hate it because I know that if you talk to me and you know me, like I'm a productive member of society. I'm on my shit. I take care of myself, and I live a very responsible life.
You have a beautiful apartment.
Thank you.
And you should, and anybody listening, y'all should have seen how meticulous Kevin is about this whole setup. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch.
I am.
Definitely not a druggie.
Well, and that's the thing. But the perception to the ignorant is anyone who does drugs, and the term drugs is meant to be negative. It's meant to be a negative connotation, even though Advil's a drug and alcohol's a drug and cannabis is a drug, and they all obviously are very different from one another. The term was meant to be demonized. I mean, that was what the design was when it was the war on drugs.
Pejorative, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, fear, right? What that is it's the idea that you're not going to survive. You feel like you're going to get ousted. You feel like you're going to get kicked out of the tribe.
Canceled.
You're canceled. Oh man, you want to go there? We can. But
not yet.
But on this topic specifically, you want to belong. I mean, I know that's my desire is like I want to belong. That's why I don't say. There's a lot that I want to say in this world that, man, I'm going to get a lot of pushback for. And at a point in time this year, I will start coming out with how I actually view the world. I have a very heterodox view of the world compared to a lot of my contemporaries. And I was screaming at the top of my lung last night. But I find that the reason why I don't share is because I don't want pushback. I don't want to defend myself. I don't want to. I don't want to
be vulnerable.
I don't want to be vulnerable.
Not in a public way. Maybe on a one-on-one basis, but in a public forum, you don't want to be vulnerable.
Right, because there's going to be so many people who are going to say certain things about me that aren't going to be true.
But they're going to hurt.
And it's going to hurt. And the reason why I believe that is because I see how the people that I do agree with do get pushback. And I see that the people that I do agree with are canceled. I like my job. I like what I do for a living. I want to provide for my family doing what I currently do. And I also recognize that I have a view that isn't like most of the people I hang out with. And again, it proves I'm not giving people the benefit of the doubt, though. It's still that asshole maneuver where I'm not being completely honest. It comes out every now and again, but you've asked me to do this. I just had, before we did this podcast, I had a friend who asked me to do this, is to start speaking and just saying what's on my mind. I'm afraid of doing it because I don't really know a lot of people that think the way I think. Sure, psychedelics, sure, psychology, philosophy, those type of things, great. But when it comes to like those deeper things like cancel culture or politics or freedom of speech, culture in general, American culture, I don't talk about those things very openly, and it's fear-based because I still want to belong. I still want people to like me at the end of the day.
But if they like you for the mask and they don't like you for who you are, then that doesn't mean shit.
Boom.
Yeah. Well, and so I actually do want to kind of pivot into the cancel culture thing because to me, what that says is that we have now cultivated a society where people do not feel like they can freely express their thoughts without bad faith actors coming in and smearing you for the purposes of their gain. And so I'm going to use it in the political arena because it's the easiest, most gross form, but it happens everywhere. So this isn't limited to politics. So let's look at the, are you familiar with the Joe Rogan controversy with the Bernie?
With Bernie?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's really funny is, one, I don't know if it was the smartest move for the Bernie campaign to just take that segment and put it out as an ad. I do love what he said about Bernie in that segment. Was he's like, hey, you could take, and they did this exactly to him, and Joe just responded. I watched his response. But like, you can take anything that somebody says out of context and you can smear them and misrepresent them and whatever, which is exactly what they did to Joe. Okay, so we had some technical difficulties. I'm trying to record in a new way. GarageBand decided I only like 30 minutes worth of content. So in the future, I'm going to record this a little differently. But I wanted to continue it because I really like where we're going. I did not want to scrap that podcast. So let's get back into it, Jerry. Where I left everything off when it cut me off was that they misrepresented Joe Rogan, who has for sure said some controversial things, for sure been high and said some stupid shit. And when you take, his argument out of context about trans people, he was literally talking about a trans male to female who was beating the fuck out of people in fighting competitions, which does actually have physical implications and is dangerous. So without actually touching that subject, because I don't really want to get into that, Joe can defend himself, but the fact that you can be misrepresented in a way that is completely dishonest. By the way, the people smearing Joe, they're the Clinton wing, the Obama wing. They just want to defend their status quo because they know, yes, they're bad faith actors. They know that Bernie is an existential threat to their careerist ambitions and for them to move up in Washington. And if he comes in and actually shakes up the system, their whole revolving door of politicians and consultants and the political class and the entertainers and the news people and all that, it's literally a threat. Right. And he's not the only candidate that's a threat to that, but he's the one right now that's the front runner. So, they're trying to smear him in any way they can. And because the dude's consistent and, you could disagree with his policies, but you can't say he's not an honest dude and that he doesn't believe in what he stands for, right? Like it's very clear that the dude's an authentic guy.
Which is what Joe was saying.
Yes, and that's exactly the point. So the fact that these kind of things can happen, and not just in the political world, but in any other world where people, I don't love the term virtue signaling because to me it implies.
I love that term.
No, and here's the thing. I agree with the term, but what the problem is that some of the people that use it are also bad faith actors.
Yeah, and they use it as a pejorative.
Yes, and it's not necessarily always a pejorative. It really can just be that some people just really want to look righteous, or they just the same thing with your mask of trying to look like but I'm better than you. I'm more holy than you. Alan Watts fucking talked about that all the time. The spiritual one-upmanship of like, I'm more spiritual than you, and you're,
Yep.
and I'm more religious than you, and so I think that is a problem, that we're cultivating a culture that is trying to create gotcha moments with people instead of having an honest dialogue, an open discussion where we really can, if we're both being in good faith, we're going to get somewhere. Right. But if one of us is in bad faith, you're wasting your time talking to them, and everything you say is going to be turned against you, even when you might be speaking very nuanced and you might have a point about something. They're going to just be like, see, said that questionable thing without, ignoring all the context around it and ignoring what is really at the crux of it.
Yep. So, cancel culture is it's been I've witnessed it for a while. I mean, this is beyond Twitter. Being in the comedy community, I can definitely tell you this is something that people do. It's something. It's not just a political thing. It's narcissistic behavior, to be honest. I'm not saying that the people who act that way are narcissists, but it is narcissistic behavior. At least that's what I'm going to diagnose it as. It's power hungry folks. It's people who don't believe that the power is within them, and don't believe that they can stand up on their own thoughts and stand up for their own beliefs. Especially when an argument of sound cause or sound judgment comes to them that they have to actually face. Instead of facing it, what they'd rather do is demonize the person saying it, or, and said in another way, it's what is it? Killing the messenger.
Yeah. Yes, totally.
And so. And another problem that we have with cancel culture is people like me who don't want to speak up, who don't want to say what they actually think about,
for fear of the mob.
But for fear of the mob, it's Nietzsche. Nietzsche talks about this, right? That the collective has a strong hold on the individual. And because everybody wants to belong, at the end of the day, my survival is predicated on the fact that society accepts me for who I am, or at least who I present myself to be. So if we're getting down to a place that Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, whatever, but social media,
sure.
When the loudest people are the ones that get heard, everybody starts to believe that the loudest people speaking is everyone, when in fact that's not the case. And you bring up this political thing. It's like people don't realize that just because a blue check mark says something, it's likely not true. Like they are probably the most biased people.
They have vested interests.
They have a vested interest. They need that money,
especially in keeping the system the same.
Right.
So,
but I don't even think it's. I mean, the reason why it's happening is because people don't trust anybody anymore. And the reason why we don't trust anybody anymore is because we don't trust ourselves anymore. I mean, I just said to you a couple months ago, I feel like an asshole. It's because I don't act in good faith. I don't trust that I can say what I want without hurting your feelings. And if you do that enough times, you start to resent and you start to find scapegoats outside of yourself. And you want to talk about Washington, D.C., that place is so corrupt, so bad, that the most powerful people are probably the worst faith people.
Yes.
And
because they know they can bully, and they know how messaging works, and they know how propaganda works.
Right.
And so you got the Neera Tandons of the world. Oh my God.
The who?
Neera Tandon. She is the head of the Center for American Progress, which is not progressive, but
is it a left wing?
It's a corporate. It was supposed to be a left wing thing, but it's corporate. It's pro Hillary Clinton. It's pro
neoliberal.
It's neoliberal.
Yeah.
And so Neera Tanden is the worst faith actor on the left. I'm going to go out and say it. Like between her and Hillary, they're kind of tied.
Yeah.
Neera Tanden literally punched Faiz. Is it Shakur? I'm trying to remember his last name. But he is like one of the campaign managers. I think he's like the head campaign manager for Bernie. And she literally punched him in public because of an email exchange. This email was leaked, by the way, from the WikiLeaks thing. So, but like punched him because he said like, I don't think it's a good idea for us to try to make money off of getting into these wars, because she was saying that we should just take the oil because, it's for our inconvenience of being there or something like that. And it's like, do you not see the negative feedback loop of that? And then I think he like called out Hillary Clinton on something, and then she went and punched him for it. And it's like, that's crazy to me already. But on Twitter, she always, in bad faith, goes against all the progressives on Twitter. And I mean, the progressives, like, not the trying to be more woke than you progressives, the one who really believe in like certain things and they stand for them and they're consistent. The people who are logically consistent. I think that good faith actors, right? There's bad faith woke leftists, and then there's good faith woke leftists, but not like, not like trying to be woker than you, literally just being like, hey, based on the facts, this is kind of what the deal is. And based on my belief system, which I've been consistent and honest about, this doesn't make sense or whatever. Yeah. Those exist.
Those people I love.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I could have a conversation with them.
Yes. Like the Michael Brooks of the world, some people would say Sam Cedar can be condescending, but to me, he's at least logically consistent.
Kyle Kalinske.
I think is awesome. I think he's one of my favorites. I disagree
with him on a lot of things, but yeah.
But he's one of my favorites from the standpoint of the dude's honest. He tells you what his bias is up front, and you get what you know. Like you see it for what it is, and like you said, you can disagree with him, but you at least know he's an honest, good faith actor. And if you wanted to have a debate with him, he would have a debate with you, and he would be like, "I'm going to come from a real standpoint and not try to get gotcha moments or try to, use the Twitter mob or whatever."
So this is what's coming up for me. The Kyle Kalinskes of the world, the Tim Pools. Tim Pool is my dude. I love Tim Pool. I don't know if you know Tim Pool.
I know who Tim Pool is. I have mixed feelings on him.
Oh, that's interesting. We can talk about that later. Yeah.
Because sometimes he's just factually wrong on things, but I understand where he comes from. Like, I do feel like he's got a consistent point of view.
He has a very consistent point of view.
Sometimes he goes too hard against the woke leftist people who are bad faiths people, because to me that's not representative of most people I've met. But
but what I appreciate about him is because he calls out those bad faith actors that nobody else wants to. Nobody else is calling them. Nobody on the left, at least.
Kyle Kalinske would, and Michael Brooks would, and Crystal Ball, all of them totally do.
Crystal Ball is great.
Dude, Crystal Ball is awesome. I love her.
She just showed up on my radar. And I'm like, yo, Crystal Ball.
On her radar, funny enough. That's her segments.
Anyways, back to cancel culture. So that's to me that's the macro level. But what that does on a more micro level, on a face to face, it causes a huge problem. Because most people, the people we have dinners with, the people that we have coffee with, and this, any other, are more than likely listening to the bad faith actors than they are to the good faith actors.
Because they have the money and power.
Because they have the money and power. It's not even about the money, because you have like people who work for Vox News who keep pumping out a bunch of stuff that's BS. You have people who work for what do you call that publication? Like New York Times, even.
Dude, they endorse two candidates who are diametrically opposed, technically.
It's awful.
And not to mention, Elizabeth Warren isn't even as progressive as people try to say she is. Yeah,
bro,
that's a whole. I'll go down that rabbit hole.
But that's the problem with cancel culture. No one knows what's true anymore.
Yeah.
All we know is I mean, the colloquialism, I can't pronounce it.
Colloquialism.
Thank you. Is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Yes.
And that's what's happening right now. Most of America doesn't give a crap about cancel culture. They just want to go about their day. Most of America doesn't even know what's happening on Twitter, but Twitter is what is
reported on.
Dude,
they'll literally take one tweet and make it a story, even though it's like it was a tweet and like maybe 7,000 people liked it.
And people wonder how Trump got elected. And so because it's like
they focus on the wrong thing.
They're focusing on the wrong thing, and he knew that. And whenever I tell people, my friends, I'm on the left. I'm left to center. When I tell people, yo, the reason why he won is because y'all keep listening to the wrong people.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset. I'm like, how many times do you have to say the sky is falling before people are going to be like,
I don't believe it anymore.
And now she's trying to say Bernie is an asset. Which now that
she's a bad faith actor on another level.
Oh God,
she called him a career politician.
Dude, the stuff, and that's another thing.
What?
The people who are bad, if you just open your eyes, the bad faith actors tell you actually how they view the world. Why? Because they project and they can't help it.
Yep.
They cannot help it
because they don't know themselves.
They don't. Hillary's book. I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but
if you're upsetting Hillary Clinton people, I don't care. They're not part of my family.
I have a lot of friends that are with her. I'm like, do you know how many other hers ran in that election? Why does it have to be her? Anyways, what I was trying to say is that
you're not going to get any disagreements from me on that.
In her book, she did not take any responsibility. And it
was everyone else's fault.
Not everybody.
Bernie, who campaigned for her for 42 rallies, went in states that she never even visited and yet didn't work hard enough for her.
Right.
And she said because, he held off on endorsing me, like you did with Obama.
Right.
Like, that's where it's like she's such a bad faith actor. It's like, dude, if we're actually comparing apples to apples here, you were way worse. She only supported, I think, like 8 or 9 rallies for Obama in 2008.
Right.
And she hated him. And then she put out like that picture of Obama wearing a turban and like, you know what I mean? Like she did a bunch of things that were just so low and gross. And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of Obama anyway. I'm just pointing it out.
And the reason why this perpetuates is because of this cancel culture. Because people are afraid of actually speaking up. Because if enough people actually said something, it wouldn't fly. It just wouldn't fly. And the problem is most people don't even realize cancel culture is happening. That's the thing. Because if people realize that cancel culture is happening, well, maybe the people, I don't know.
I think people are aware of it.
Here in Chicago, I am friends with people that have done cancel culture to local businesses. Because, because, the owner of the shop happened to have supported a certain politician, or an owner of a shop doesn't really fall in line with the progressive leftist ideology and stuff like that. And so they rally everybody. They post on Facebook and this and the other about how terrible this person is. Oh, I knew I should have never gone into that place. Like, get the out of here.
Are they providing a good service? Are they hurting the community? That's really matters.
Yeah. Or, okay, just stop going.
Yeah.
Like you don't. Another example is there's somebody that I'm friends with someone who's I'm friends with a Proud Boy.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild.
I'm friends with somebody who's a Proud Boy. We did comedy together back in the day. And dude's hilarious. He's hilarious. And he's a Proud Boy. And someone got on my messenger and messaged me and was like, Jerry, can you believe that so-and-so is a Proud Boy? And I was just like, yeah, I know. And they were like, oh, and you can allow for something like that? I was like, I mean, he's not he's not doing it. What do you want me to do? He's like, you just need to stop following him and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why? He's not doing anything. Mm-hmm. In actuality, if you actually get to know him and you actually get to know him and his friends, you might realize that he's actually just a normal guy who hangs out with a bunch of bravado guys that have their own ideology just like you do. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not evil. They're not bad. They just want to stand up for what they believe in. Mm-hmm. I brought that up to her and she couldn't handle it. And she was like, that's it. We're not friends anymore on Facebook. She canceled me. That's my point.
Yeah.
Why should I fall in line with people who think the other side, the people who disagree with them, are inherently evil? I'm not down with that.
No, that doesn't work.
My friend, he doesn't think that way. He thinks she's an idiot. He thinks that people on my side of the aisle are idiots, but he'll at least have a conversation with me. He's not alt-right. He's mm-hmm. not white supremacist. In fact, he's dating a Hispanic girl. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and some of his friends are Hispanic. He has black friends that are Proud Boys. But the people who are so self-righteous, mm-hmm. so know that they are correct, they won't even give it a second thought.
They won't engage. Well, because here's the thing. I do think that there are some people who they won't sit down with you, mm-hmm. and those people are bad faith actors.
Right.
And I think, don't engage with them.
Right.
But because it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of your energy. So like I've had, I post political posts on Facebook and stuff, and I post on Instagram, and I know I piss off a lot of people. I've had my own sister unfollow me, but that being said, if people are willing to have a civil discourse with me, I'm willing to have the conversation.
Right.
The second it becomes like I can tell that they're not being genuine, or that they just go, but Venezuela, or like, you know what I mean? Like those people.
But my Venezuela.
But Venezuela, socialism, bad. Like without any nuance of like, yeah, dude, we're not talking about socialism, the entire economy. We're talking about just healthcare and education, which is something we already do up to K through 12. Why not extend it to to 16? Certain things like that, where it's like, if you're not willing to even have that discussion with me, then I might unfollow you because it's literally a waste of time and you're just trolling my posts. So I have deleted people because they were literally bad faith actors. I would present them with evidence and numbers, and then they'd ignore that and then bring up something else and change and move the goalpost. You know, those people aren't worth your time. But if somebody's willing to have a dialogue with you and somebody's willing to engage with you, then I think you should try to. And I recently listened to that Joe Rogan episode where he had on Daryl, I can't remember his last name. He's the guy who converted a bunch of people from the KKK.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amazing story. And talk about like people who you would think are irredeemable, right? KKK members. You think these people are the fucking worst of all time. And all he did was just engage them honestly. And it's not that he didn't push back on their ideas. He totally did. But over time, he broke down that barrier and kind of just through example showed like clearly your views of black people are wrong and are based on nonsense.
Yeah. Right.
Over time, they then gave it up. Some of them were like grand dragons, and I'm not going to get into the hierarchy of it because I don't even remember all of that. But he had people that straight up disbanded their entire little local KKK clan.
Right.
So, clearly people are more redeemable than you think.
Exactly.
But there are definitely still some percentage of people that are like, dude, just don't waste your time. I think you gotta pick your battles. If they're willing to talk to you.
Yes, pick your battles. And in this case, he picked his battle.
Yeah.
He did pick his battle, right? One of the things that I have a problem with people on our side of the aisle is self-check. Like we as left-wingers, if you will, don't I don't even think I'm a left-winger. I definitely am not a right-winger. It's just
you're not a left-winger, but I don't think so. What I think you are is I think you're the true center of America. And by that, I mean not a centrist, not a corporatist. That's a totally different thing. That's what the media tells you as the center is the corporate of like, oh, yeah, we're still going to go into all the wars.
Right.
We're still going to do all this stuff. We're still going to make tax cuts for the wealthy, but we'll throw some social bones.
Right.
That's not really the center of America. Yeah. Most of America actually leans pretty left if you ask them on the issues in an honest question.
Social issues,
Yeah, well, not even just social, economic too. Are you for covering everybody with healthcare? Yes. Are you for government takeover of your health care? No. It's how you word the question.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of an important distinction. But I think where you stand is probably where most Americans do in terms of like economic policy and kind of a general feeling about certain issues.
For the most part, I lean more libertarian than anything. Where it's just like, leave me alone. Like,
yes, but you're also not like we don't need government at all or that. Tax is theft. That to me is a little too extreme.
So here's the funny thing. I agree with that. I do agree that tax is theft. I just don't see any other option. And so that's...
Well, your dollars don't mean anything if there isn't a government to back it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, to me...
We're back again. We keep hitting the recording limit, but we're determined to finish this podcast. Okay, so anyway... Where we just finished was you saying that you believe that tax is theft, but there is no other way, right?
Right. So
define theft, though.
So it's the enforcement of what do you call it?
It's the stealing of property.
It's taking of my property for
who identifies property.
Right. I mean, I'm
no. I'm just curious. Like,
right.
I'm literally asking the question: who identifies property? Like, what is, what's the Earth's ground versus somebody's property? Right. It's the government distinction, correct?
Right.
And the protection of that distinction through government rules, right? What's stopping me from stealing your land?
But here's the rub, and this is the libertarian argument: is like, well, who is determining what should be taken and where it's going? And the libertarians is like, I should have the right to do with my money, my property, whatever I want. And I get that. And so, like, to me, it's like, I understand that argument. And that's where I'm in good faith, where I'm like, okay, no, I totally get that argument.
Yeah.
Where I'm also in good faith is, yes. And there are needs that we have. I mean, they have some strong arguments that I'm like, that's a really good one, but I can't get behind it, right?
Yeah. Because for me, like, it's really, you're never going to get just a community of people to just build a road or to, give you the infrastructure you need in a way that a massive government project can get by pooling the resources of hundreds of millions of people or something. You're just not going to get the resources. Like, even if everybody in the community pooled together some percentage of their money, it's still probably not enough to build the public works that we have.
Right.
So,
you can't do public works on a libertarian policy.
You literally
just couldn't happen.
Yeah. So that's where I'm in favor of the personal freedom aspect of libertarianism. But I think it's not based on what we have, not only as this current system, but even as any future system. I just don't foresee that being able to play out in the freest version of libertarianism.
It's exactly the reason why communism would never work.
Exactly.
It's just, those are like...
I agree.
Ideologies.
They're
ideologies are just that.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not a rule
All
set.
that said, the neoliberal ideology has a very stronghold on everybody.
Everything. Yeah.
And so one could argue, well, one ideology has rule over everybody, so why couldn't this other ideology have rule over everybody? Well, I'll say that the extremes of the left, communism, is deadly, and the extremes of the right, is libertarian right? We'll say yes.
I would say it's like taking it a step further than just right-wing politics.
We'll call it an extreme. These labels are so dumb. But the extreme of libertarianism is very isolating. And
we're community.
You can't trust other people with that. So it's like you see how like the two extremes are kind of deadly.
Yeah, totally. No, they totally are.
You need community.
I'm not for communism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All I want is basic social programs and a social safety net, which I think, not only do other countries already do, but just that they're very doable. And it's not that we don't have the money. It's literally allocation of resources.
Right.
Neoliberal policies have us spending it in war and conflict and tax cuts for the rich and all these things that are benefiting a small select people who are the ones writing the rules. All I'm asking for is kind of a baseline so that everybody has a decent starting point. And then what you do from that is on you. If you really want to live a good life, you still got to fucking work hard for it.
That sounds like UBI to me.
And I'm in favor of UBI.
That's so sexy.
So what I think is really clear. This is my ideal vision of how this 2020 election would play out. I want Andrew Yang in Bernie's cabinet. I do. I want him to be in charge of technology. I want him to get Bernie to agree with him on UBI, in addition to healthcare, in addition to education, because I think they only work together. I think if you just use UBI or you just use healthcare or you just use education, it's going to help people, but it's not going to fully solve it. You have to tackle it from so many different angles.
So
because I like Yang. But I don't love all of his policies. I think his healthcare policy is actually worse than Biden's, which is amazing to me because Biden's is horrible. But that being said, I love UBI. I love how he approaches AI and technology. I think we need somebody like him who is that focused in the cabinet. I think we do. And I think he'd be powerful. And not to mention, I think a lot of Yang supporters would be willing to vote for Bernie if he becomes the nominee. And I think that Yang...
I think anybody who's voting D is going to vote for whoever is there because we...
Yes, but only the same people who voted in 2016, which wasn't enough, right? It was enough on the popular vote, but it wasn't enough electorally. So
I think there's enough people who voted for Trump who just did it because they didn't want Hillary. Yeah. I truly believe it was a good
if you give
percentage.
them Biden, they're going to also stay home.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
So, and that's going to help Trump. Voter suppression helps Trump. So if you want to win, to me, you need to energize the base. Who energizes the base? Bernie. And I would argue Yang. And I would even argue Tulsi Gabbard energizes some parts of the base.
She doesn't energize. She doesn't do it. And
she
it's
doesn't.
So unfortunate because I truly believe she's the best candidate. I believe. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I just truly believe she's the best candidate. But she rubs people the wrong way.
She does.
She rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I support her, but like I don't even think about her anymore.
I think she should again be in the cabinet. I think a lot of these people, none of the neoliberal people, but all the ones who actually stand for something, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, those are the people who ask like, oh, what are their policies? Oh, yeah, UBI. Oh, against foreign intervention. Oh, healthcare for all, right? You can just immediately.
Yep.
What do the other people stand for?
Neoliberal concepts.
Incrementalism. We can't. Don't dream too big. We can only do some of it. And it's like, no, that's stupid. We need the person in charge to have vision. And no, they're not going to be able to get everything done. But what I need is somebody who's going to fight and who isn't going to compromise immediately. And don't worry, I'm aware of the time.
The Brexit just happened yesterday, and it made me laugh because it's the neoliberals that are so blind to the fact that most of the population doesn't give a shit about what they have to say. And in fact, it's not even that they don't give a shit. It's that they're over it. It doesn't make any sense. It obviously doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
clearly.
Clearly
it's hit the limit too. It kind of worked enough, and people were surviving enough to not fight it. Now, no, we hit the limit.
Yeah, and I'm a little scared about it because the ramifications of the neoliberal system breaking down is a new system is going to have to fill the void.
Yeah,
and my fear is that we'll push too far. Maybe I'm an incrementalist too. I don't know, but maybe we'll push too far in one direction. I don't think Trump is a far right person. I don't agree.
He's more of the same, but
he's center right.
He's got an uglier mask.
Exactly.
And he makes it more obvious when he does shit. He just straight up admits shit.
He's doing literally what he campaigned on.
We're going to take the oil. We're going to take the oil.
He's doing literally what he campaigned on. He said he was going to drain that swamp, and you best believe that swamp is bubbling like a mofo. That's what this whole...
But he didn't drain it. He just filled it with more of the people.
Watch what's about to happen. Oh, no. He's getting... He brings them in, and then he kicks them out. He brings them in, and then he kicks them out. That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah,
Why?
but only because they betray him.
Think about it,
It's
though.
self-interested. He's not like honorably draining the swamp.
I can't say if he's being honorable or not.
He's not.
But he is.
Dude's a con man.
You know why? So is Hillary.
Yeah.
So is Biden.
Yeah, I don't need whataboutism.
And so
I'm
it's
just
not
talking
about
him.
whataboutism. What I'm talking about is specifically when he said he's going to drain the swamp, what that means to me is he's going to show the nasty side of what's going on. And then if you're actually awake to it, you'll see it for what it is. That's the reason why these neoliberals are all and neocons are all freaking out about him,
because they're shining a light on it. But the thing is, I don't think he's doing that as a master manipulative thing. I mean, he literally hired, like, he had Rex Tillerson, who's a CEO of Exxon, and you know, he had a bunch of people on that were literally the swamp, right? The corporate consultant class and all that. And yes, maybe he's kicked them out, but only after they said something publicly against him or betrayed him in some way. And so then he kicked them out. But he didn't kick them out forever. In fact, dude, right now, neoliberals are rehabbing the image of people like David Frum, you know what I mean, who's a neocon, and this motherfucker was so pro-war in Iraq, and yet now they're trying to prop him up as like, look, it's a never-Trumper. Dude, I'm sorry, but if you know anybody on the right, most people are not never-Trumpers. Most people are for Trump. They're like, yeah, I'm for Trump. Like, if they're on the right. Most people, like... His approval rating within the right populace,
it's huge.
It's huge, but his approval rating is totally huge. It's bigly. But like, it's huge there. But then, yes, in the political class, they think, oh, but he's not doing the dance we do.
Right.
He's not hiding it better.
Right.
I don't like that. He's making me feel kind of sleazy.
He's making us look bad.
Yeah.
That's what they're upset about.
Yes.
And that's what he's doing.
But he's doing their policies, and guess what? Guess what they did? They voted for his budget. Dude, his military budget that they greenlit, that extra $137 billion or whatever it was, that could have paid for education right there. And we greenlit it for the military. So we never asked the question with the military, yet we're always like, how are you going to pay for it for anything that helps regular people?
But that's the industrial complex at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, totally.
So part of me is like, look, if let's just say I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to go into that
generous.
I have this conversation with my brother. I'll have this conversation with anybody. I will give him the benefit of the doubt because he is literally showing what's happening in DC. Like it or not, he is. You're right. They're giving him all this money to go do all this awful stuff. But it would have happened.
He's a lunatic. But here's an extra $137
But it would have happened anyways. And now we're seeing that this is happening, right?
Yeah.
So what happens? I'm not saying I want him to win, but what happens if he does win? What happens the next 4 years? Does he actually drain the swamp? Could it possibly be? Hold on.
I don't think so.
Could it? People don't want to think like this. Just think about this. Could it possibly be that he has to play the game the way he's playing it in order to show what's happening, right, to his base, and then gets voted again, and then the next 4 years he's going to be like, all right, it's time, because he couldn't do it in the first 4 years because he still has to push against what's coming at him, right? So that's me giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying I agree with him.
Yeah, I think
I'm not necessarily agreeing with the process.
I think that's pretty generous.
But he's winning. He is winning. That's the thing. Why is he winning?
Well, it's because when you don't stand for anything, it's easy to look bad when they try to point out all these things that don't matter. So they try to get on him for little tweets and whatever that he says.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's helping the genocide in Yemen, and no one reports on that.
Right.
All right, and then he assassinates the general of Iran, which, like it or not, whether that general has done good or bad things, it is still a political figure of another country, of a sovereign nation. So that's something you're making the international community not be respected, where, okay, well, clearly if the United States isn't going to follow the rules, then why the fuck should we?
I'm about to whataboutism, though. Because, or whataboutism. I'm about to what about that? Because and, like, that's what Obama did. That's what Bush did. That's what Clinton did.
And you would have heard me calling out all of them too, though. That's the thing. I'm a good faith actor.
But the thing is, we didn't call him out.
I mean, I did, but very unpopularly.
When Hillary was called out for that stuff as Secretary of State, it was like swept under the rug.
Yes, like, because the political class protects her.
And that is what upsets his base, is that how dare y'all go and call him out on this stuff, and then y'all still going to prop her up, who still hasn't come to terms, or no one's brought her to task about this. I mean, this whole impeachment thing that's happened is like the whole reason why that even came up is because of Joe Biden. No one wants to talk about that.
Well, so I'll comment on that. So one, Joe Biden's obviously corrupt. So let's get that out of the way. He's obviously corrupt. That whole getting hired by Burisma, all of that, clearly corrupt, clearly bad. That was not, he wasn't trying to weed out the corruption. What he was trying to do is get dirt on his political opponent. So
I don't agree with that.
So although Biden is corrupt, and you're not going to have me disagree with it, I do not like him, and I want Bernie to trounce him. You know what I mean? So like, keep in mind, I'm not defending Biden at all. But Trump is like a mob boss. Okay?
So is Hillary.
Yes. Again, we don't need to go there because you're not going to find an argument from me.
Right.
I'm not one of those people who's been yas queening and defending her. Like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that being said, if that's his goal was literally just to get dirt on a political opponent, he's not allowed to withhold funds. He's just not. It's literally illegal.
Yeah, I get that.
The other thing is, they should have impeached him on the emoluments clause. He's not allowed to have financial interest because they all have that too.
Right.
And so they didn't want to do it. So the strongest case for impeachment is one that implicates every single person, with the exception of a few in the House and the Senate.
Right.
Bernie being one of them, I think. But there's an exception of the few, but like, they knew that it would implicate all of them, and it would put them all on the hook eventually, and that Trump could just point to you guys and be like, hey, you guys are doing it too. And the truth is they are. So again, you're not going to find pushback from me on that because I agree with you.
Right.
But my point is that the dude's impeachable for like so many different reasons, and they chose this one, which I don't know why. It's not that good of a decision.
I can tell you why.
And the Republicans were never going to do it. You knew that they were going to vote no.
Of course they weren't.
Especially because they're not good faith actors.
Right.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is he's winning. And it, as much as that sucks, he's winning because he is letting them show their own cards. And that's how he's, quote unquote, draining the swamp. He's like, all right, challenge me. I dare you. Why? Because he knows they don't have a foot to stand on.
Sure. That's fair, but he is also clearly losing his mind. Have you seen some of the clips of him slurring his speech and stuff?
They're all losing their mind, bro.
No. But I'm talking like literally like dementia. Like, I think he has dementia.
Really?
Yeah, it's bad. So
they're all too damn old.
Joe Biden too. So here's the thing. Bernie's old, but he's sharp.
He just had a heart attack a couple weeks ago.
Not a couple weeks ago. It was a couple months ago.
Was it a month?
And by the way, after the heart stints, he has more energy than he did before. Then. So, and here's the thing. That procedure is actually super common. So although I think it is something that you can definitely say is like, well, that's a little bit of a concern. I actually don't think it will be now because I think those heart stints have put him in a better place than he was before, as well as dialing back his schedule, which is still very rigorous, by the way, more rigorous than any of the other candidates.
So, anyways, let's.
But to me, it's dangerous that we have people defending somebody who probably has dementia of some form, cognitive decline, and I think we need to just win by voting him out. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
But that being said, we need to have protections in place. We can't let dude, Joe Biden's running for president. This dude's talking about hairy legs. Have you seen that fucking snippet? Dude, I got the hairy legs and turn blonde in the sun.
And the kids just like, oh.
And I love kids jumping on my lap. Dude, what the fuck was that?
You already have a problem with kids as it is.
Yes, the touching.
But here's the thing about Joe Biden. This dude has been a gaffer forever.
Yep.
And I don't understand
Well, that's
how
why
it
he's
is.
lost every race he's ever gone in.
Except he was a senator.
No. I'm saying the presidential races.
Oh, gotcha.
He's been in a bunch of them, and he's lost every single one of them.
Yeah, because he's a
Dude, some of them he hasn't even made it to like the first ballot.
because
bro.
he's a complete doof.
He's an idiot, and he's a career politician. He's like a clear, just I don't really stand for anything. Where does
Right.
the wind blowing? Yeah.
So what's going to
How's
happen?
that guy the front runner, and how is he the most electable?
So what my prediction is? Well, actually, I don't want to make any predictions. I actually told myself I was going to wait till after Monday, the 3rd,
Iowa,
just to see.
and New Hampshire.
I predicted that Trump was going to win in 2016.
Me too. Once Hillary got the nom, I knew that was.
Oh,
what was
actually when did I assume that it was going to happen? It was before the conventions, and it was just obvious to me because in 2012, I just had this realization that the only way are we at 30 again?
No.
Oh,
We're getting close though. So
okay.
just keep that.
We'll wrap here.
Yeah.
In 2012, I made the prediction that the person who was going to win the 2016 election was going to be somebody who we would never consider and would use the internet like nobody's business. And so when he announced, I was like, no fucking way. I was like, that's not going to happen. And then as CNN kept fucking up and kept showing him and all this stuff, and you just if you watch the internet and how it was,
did you see
flowing,
the email that said prop him up as a Pied Piper candidate?
No, I did not see that.
Hillary Clinton asked to prop him up by the media.
I did. So in
And
2016,
it backfired
in
so
2016,
beautifully.
I actually thought that the whole reason why Trump was a Republican or running as a Republican was to get the Republicans out of the race and let her walk in. I actually thought he was a plant. I thought, like when they talk about Russian collusion, I was like, I actually thought he was actually a Democrat collusion.
Yeah.
Because he was friends with the Clintons. Like it's not. No one seems to want to talk about those type of things. No one wants to see. Anyways.
Well, it's because they share the same class, so it's easy for them to be on the same team.
Yeah, buddy, and all that stuff. So I'll end on this note. I like talking more philosophy and existentialism than all this stuff. So I'll end on this note. Whenever I find myself lost in the political shuffle and the headache and the misunderstandings coming from all sides, I have to remind myself that there's only this now moment, and that, man, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, so what I do to help myself with that is I go and watch like videos of history of like how like countries change like that. I know I snapped that. I don't know if that's messing up your thing, but like what we feel is the end of the world isn't the end of the world. The world has been around for a long time. Human populations have been around for a long time. And not only that, as deadly as the first two world wars were, the human population exploded after those wars. Exploded. Technology exploded after those wars. So I have to like take a step back and realize that, you know what? At the end of the day, Trump being our president is not the worst thing in the world. The world's not going to end because of him. And if something happens because of him, it still won't be the end of the world. All I have is me and what I stand for and the people I love and the people who are in my zone of influence to make sure that they know that the truth of who they are is power and that they can do whatever they want. I'm reading a book right now. I can't think of the title. It's not that great of a book, but it's the guy who owns a bunch of the oil lube shops here in the city. He writes about how the Russians and the Germans were both attacking his people in Poland and how his mom was still able to own a candy shop that the kids shopped at. That reminds me that, the sun's going to come up and we're going to be all right.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we're about to run into our limit for the fucking third time. So thank you so much, Jerry, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Next time we will do this and we won't have that limit.
Excellent. I love talking to you, man.
Me too. Peace.
Peace.